I can't think of fitting music, so it's silence for now. Sorry if that's boring.
Alright, I'm transitioning to this screen here so I can set up some stuff. Okay, so, because one of the things I'm still skeptical on, right, is somebody told me they would like to be my guest on the show. So, close that out. I'm going to give them a call and see if they actually honor that. And turn up my TV. Well, I not be able to find my TV remote. They didn't pick up the call. That's upsetting. I'm going to stay in this Discord call, though, because they said they would join me for the episode where I talk about formicophilia and bug fuckers. And I assumed when they said that, what they meant was that they would join me. And yet here I am, not joined. But alright, I'm going to transition to this. Because I think the first thing we should get out of the way is not that. This. Nope. Why is it muted? Oh.
When I'm...
Okay, hold on. Nope. Okay, I'm gonna rewind it. Check something. All messages. This. Nope. Why is it muted? Let me message someone to ask if they're gonna join me on here. Okay. So now, got that out of the way. Let me close out that. Close this. Do that. So that way it's synced up as proper as it can be. Set my chat to show all messages on my phone. And we're going to press play.
When I'm feeling insects crawling all over me, it creates this sensation that washes up and down my body that's just pure pleasure. And feeling that closeness with these creatures makes me feel wonderful and loved inside.
The fact
My name
that
is
this is a
Katie
real
Did.
thing is still shocking.
In the kink community, you need to have a sort of pseudonym.
Wait a minute. Okay, I'm still in it. Oh, bitch. Fine.
Or a way of hiding your
My
identity.
collab
I
partner
adopted that name
dipped on
because
me.
they're
If
polyamorous.
she didn't want to watch a podcast about the fucking
When I was
pod.
growing up, every summer I would spend in the mountains and hear the katydid singing. The development of my sexuality happened in nature. You can have a lot of privacy out in the wilderness, the freedom to explore things that give you pleasure. I've masturbated a lot of places out in the woods. So I would go swimming and take off all my clothes and lay down in the muck of the pond. Just feeling the clay all over me just felt really good. And laying naked on hot
How
rocks.
long is this video again? 12 minutes? There's no way this is 12 minutes.
Rocks and swarms of ants crawling all over me, walking through the tall grasses against my skin. All of these wonderful sensations nature has to offer.
I'm Winder Tashlin. I'm a sex, kink, and BDSM educator / presenter. It's probably around 16 years old when I found a slug and I put it on and experienced having it sort of just moving around. Emotionally, in an erotic sense, it was very, very intense and very exciting and very forbidden. And I didn't really start exploring again until into college. I had found an entry for it in the Encyclopedia of Unusual Sexual Practices, because I bought a copy of that at my college bookstore, because I was so curious about what people did. And I came across formicophilia, and I was like, oh, that's a thing. All right.
Okay, so also I'm adding to this because I don't want to just sit here and just have the video playing with no interruptions and being like, you know, a chair reacts as I sit here quietly, right? And this is also the biggest reason why I don't do react content usually, but I felt like with this particular episode, of everything I could include, right, this seemed like the most fitting thing to add. But I have to ask though, right? How did people go about naming things? Like, who was the first person? Like, okay, I don't know, because in my mind I'm thinking to myself, who was the first person who fucked a bug and decided to call it formicophilia, right? But at the same time, though, right, like, so I know that they also have like the formi and the cophelia, or the formico and the philia is some kind of like Latin thing or something like that, right? But how did it get to this definition here? Like a rare fetish or sexual interest in being crawled upon or nibbled by insects by the person's preference. And that's also another thing too, is because different bugs, like the phobias have different names. Like for example, I believe with wasps and bees, it's apophobia, right? So if it was you got sexually turned on by being stung by bees and wasps, would it be apophilia, or would that still be formicophilia? Like that's something I don't understand.
There's a number of factors that come in when you talk about folks who identify as kinky or don't identify as kinky. Certain
Also, wait, hold on. What is this guy doing with a leather strap? Because because how he's got it around, like I don't know if that's attached to that, but based on how this is like twisting and stuff, and it makes me think it's attached, and it makes me think he's strapping himself to this tree here. I'm just, now that I'm actually sitting here and going through and pausing it and stuff to add things to it, right? I'm starting to notice things too. Like for example, I'll pause.
Identify as kinky or don't identify as kinky.
Like this guy here. Why does he have just those two tufts of hair on the side of his head not shaved? Like I think it shows it better in a different spot in the video here. Like when it's like that part where it says just him getting dressed. I'm gonna go back here.
I'm Winder Tashlin. I'm a sex, kink, and BDSM educator / presenter.
It shows the back of his head. I want to say it shows the side of his head.
Probably around 16 years old.
Is that a mole or is that hair?
When I found a slug and I put it on and experienced having it sort of just moving around. Emotionally store, because I was so curious about what people did. And I came across formicophilia and I was like, oh, that's a thing. All right. There's a number of factors. Certainly, there have been some really fascinating shifts over the course of the last decade as things that at one time only were seen as being part of the kink world that have become very, very mainstream. The bounds of human imagination are limitless, and that applies to imagining what to do with our bodies and our relationships. There's a lot of different kinds of formicophilia play, and there's an enormous diversity of reasons someone might do formicophilia play. I've talked to people for whom formicophilia is all about physical sensation. And for them, it's just like, this is the best way to get this sensation that I want. For example, if you're using a vibrator, it's gonna do the same thing every time. Putting your penis into a container and then filling that container with earthworms. The worms will writhe and move in a way that provides an interesting and exciting physical sensation, which is unpredictable. Other people might play around wanting to connect to nature. And then for other folks, it might be about specifically playing with pain sensations. There's a lot of bugs that bite.
I just simply enjoy the sensations of the insects. The ants and earthworms are probably the two most frequent ones I play with. I've also played with tomato hornworms, caterpillars, and mealworms, so they bite. Maggots, they also bite.
And also
I've done slugs, insects that have lots of feet, like millipedes, I really enjoy.
It looked like he was wearing heels for a second there.
Insects are the great decomposers. So they are very important for breaking down all the lignins in the wood. If insects aren't there to do the job, it's just left to the mushrooms, I guess.
Hold on, is this just like an auto thing or something?
Every time I come out into the woods and walk,
There are so many different species to learn about.
Pauses. Because... Okay, so it only has, English
About,
auto-generate.
and
You'd think
so many
Vice, of all
different
people, would have just
points of
actual
reference
subtitles and
for
not
where they like to
auto-generated
live
ones.
and what conditions they like and what they eat. Just simply observing animal behavior. Once you really zero in on, if you're just walking down the trail and focused on a destination, you can miss a lot of those interesting little details. Everything here is part of the scene. I wouldn't think of anything as being off limits. If I'm doing a scene with somebody out in the woods, as long as we agree beforehand, I would say pretty much anything is fair game. So, you know, I might pick up a stick, smooth it out a bit with my knife. And now that the knots are off, you can just start beating them. Sorry.
No, so wait, what happened just now?
I'm very sensitive, and so I go to my happy place.
Almost when you
He came in his pants. Hold on.
to like an orgasm right now.
Not in a genitalia kind of way.
That,
You know, I'm not.
okay, another thing too is on the know that, right, the people who are with him asked if he got off, if he nutted. And he's like, not in a genitalia kind of way. Then you didn't come. Like, then say no. Like seriously, if I was involved in this situation, right, I would have been the smart ass. It would have been like, so when he said, well, not in a genitalia kind of way, I'm like, so you didn't come. You could have just said no. like I know these people probably aren't trying to be judgmental, right, when they are interviewing these people, right? But it's like, to me, saying that is the most pretentious way you could put it, right? Like, for example, right? If I elbowed you in the face, right? And if someone asked if I punched them, and I said, well, not in a hands kind of way, it would be like, just say no, I elbowed him. You know? like that to me just seemed... Or if you kick someone in the balls, right, with your bare foot, and they say, did you kick him? And he said, well, not in a shoes kind of way. You know? Do you see how stupid that sounds? Like, well, okay, I see in that case it sounds stupid. Maybe not as much in this guy's case, but to me, the idea of saying that when somebody asks if you just got off, and you say, well, technically, I didn't use not with my penis, but with my heart. It just sounds lame as shit.
Coming or anything. It's just, it's its own thing. I think that overall, attitudes towards kink are getting more accepting. We're starting to see it more in mainstream media. So there's, you know, socially acceptable forms of kink.
Okay. Another thing, too, I'm just going to add in now, right? If you feel like your kink is socially acceptable nowadays, uncensor your face. It's like... It's like, clearly you know you're doing something you really shouldn't be doing if you go onto a documentary and you insist they do this kind of lighting for you. Right? Like, for example, that bald guy with the fucking mole on his head and one ear gauged. Do I hate that? Do I disagree with the idea that he thinks it's okay to put bugs on his dick? Yes. But credit where it's due that he owns that shit. You know, that he's just like full face on the camera. Everyone can see him. He's like, yeah, no, I put bugs on my dick. I teach people how to put bugs on their dick. he says some weirder stuff later in the documentary that I will just let him say himself.
Kink, I feel like. And then there's socially unacceptable forms of kink. And so what's becoming more accepted in society is the like, oh, okay, you like to get tied up and, you know, maybe be spanked a little and
getting tied up and spanked is not the same thing. like it goes back into how fuck, what was his name? The guy from the Zuri the Now podcast that died, who basically spent his whole life trying to, you know, equate being into animals, bestiality, right, into the same umbrella as LGBT stuff, trying to even go as far as to add Z for zoophilia. Like, it's not the same in, well, zoophiles. It's not the same thing. You know, you can't just say, oh, you're okay with that guy because he fucks dudes, but you're not okay with me who fucks dogs? You see how that's not even close to comparable? And same thing here, right? He's comparing people being it's like, oh, so you're okay with BDSM, but you're not. You're okay with people getting spanked a little and tied up a little, but you're not okay with me putting earthworms in my dick? That's too far? Okay, that's too far? Like, these people, I swear. I'm gonna be honest here, right? Another thing, too, is another thing I will say, as much as I'm talking shit about this guy in particular, right? You know, I will have to give credit where it's due, right? If I was into this type of shit, right, nobody would know. I would not be caught dead saying, yeah, no, I like to fucking stuff my ass with maggots, you know? You would catch me dead saying that, unless I was saying it in a tone that made it sound like I was joking or being gross on purpose. Versus these people, whether it's the guy censoring his face or the guy who's just out in the open, you know, even has a video on this section of this documentary dedicated to watching him get dressed, you know? It's like, you know, credit where it's due that they own it, but, like, I'm too much of a pussy, okay? Like, I'm over here not, like, I know a while back, someone in my chat asked me what my favorite tags on, like, for, like, porn was, and I couldn't even bring myself to just say that, you know? I'm the kind of person that's like, I'll be into some weird stuff, whatever, and then whenever asked what's my favorite stuff on Pornhub, I'm like, missionary, doggy style, male POV, you know? Even though at that point, if you want male POV, you'll just get VR. But anyway, back to the video.
Some people are into other things, like insects. Many people are really turned off by.
Such a weird sound. You can hear the mealworms, or superworms in this case, squirming around in there. I'm just going to take out a few for our demonstration purposes. Well,
honestly, though,
there's a couple of things that you can easily do with them. The first and foremost, these superworms are an interesting sensation. Squirmy, they move a fair bit, and they have sharp feet for sort of gripping. Superworms also will bite. I will put usually a bit of honey onto onto an area I want them to bite. I know other people who use juice from cooking hot dogs in the microwave. Then the earthworms, rinse these off.
Okay, I'm gonna add to that too, right? I mean, yeah, honey's sticky, but just the idea of cooking some hot dogs in the microwave just so I could slather the juice on my dick to have mealworms bite my dick. Just some of the stuff they say in this. I've watched this before, but more like my first time ever watching this was Pippa and Kirsha reacting to it, right? And I was more focused on what they were saying about it, right? But going through and actually sitting through this documentary myself, you know, which, speaking of which, whenever this turns into an actual, video, right, on my channel, I will try to put the link to this in the description for anyone who wants to watch it, right? But sitting here and actually focusing on what the people are saying in this, it's like, oh my god. What the fuck?
Now, talk about the earthworms. They feel very unnatural, and you can feel that contracting and expanding against the skin.
Considering where this is going, I don't like
there's
him
certainly
like
a taboo in the kink community around formicophilia play. There are definitely folks who have concerns around consent. I don't worry over much about issues of consent if I'm talking about a maggot, because that maggot has no higher reasoning or thought process really of any kind. I very much don't feel that way about, say, my dog. My dog clearly is capable of making decisions and doing what she does or doesn't want to do. And thus, her consent is important, which is one of...
A dog can't consent either. Bug can't consent, and a dog can't consent. Trust me, his wording, it's just so bad because it just like I wouldn't fuck a dog because it's an animal, right? It doesn't understand, okay, here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. The reason why I'm gonna say I disagree with bestiality, as much as everybody should, right? Is that, and it goes into something he did say there, right? Because he said that the maggot doesn't know it's on his dick, or doesn't understand these things, right? Yeah, no. Like, if you fuck your dog, you're just hurting your dog. Your dog doesn't understand that what you're doing is for sexual gratification, and that you're trying to give your dog that same thing. It's just painful, right? I feel like it's just not the same. And it's just like, so it's not that they can't consent, it's that they don't understand what you're trying to do, and you're hurting it. At least with a bug, I mean, they're not big enough for you to stick your dick in, so you're not really hurting them as much, and bugs don't have souls, but still, except for tapeworms.
Of a myriad reasons why I would not have sex with my dog, other than not being interested in sex with dogs. So, I mean, when you look at sort of those issues, then you come back to like, well, what about that earthworm? And I had someone say to me at a class once, she said, well, that earthworm hasn't consented to being on your genitals. And my response to that was, that earthworm also doesn't know that it's on my genitals.
That goes into what I was saying about dogs, too, or the reason why you shouldn't do bestiality, right? It's like, yeah, a dog or whatever, an animal might have more of an understanding of what that is, right? But it still hurts the animal, I'm pretty sure, right?
The earthworms are being sold either as bird or reptile food or for fishing. No one worries about the consent around that. But if you bring genitals into it, people get weird.
There's
Now, I'm going to remain silent for this part because this is the absolute worst part of this entire documentary. And I want anyone in my chat to listen to this guy in full. Let me go here. OBS. We're going to turn up the audio output capture all the way. We're going to make sure this is up all the way. It is. We're going to make sure the video is up all the way. It is.
a safe way to insert earthworms into the urethra. For a lot of people, it can be disorienting, perhaps, because they have this idea of this organ is this sort of sacred thing that cannot be penetrated, and putting anything inside there is just unthinkable. I put my penis in ice cold water because worms enjoy cold places. They'll be more likely to go in that way. Sometimes that's still not enough. They still don't want to go in, and so I use incense for that. Smoke from incense will make them want to crawl down into, to get away from the smoke. What makes them crawl out? What makes this like a safe thing to do as opposed to them just like crawling into your bladder or whatever is that the deeper the worm goes, the warmer it gets. Sometimes they back out, sometimes they actually turn around. And so it's a double worm body thing going on that feels really good. I was with a partner. She always talks about the look of absolute pleasure on my face as the worm was wriggling inside me. There's just no other feeling like it.
Okay. I will have to say this, right? If this guy could stick worms in his dick and get a girlfriend, there's hope for all of us. You know, I do not care how you look in life, right? If this guy who sticks earthworms in his urethra, you know, and is going to go on a documentary and explain exactly how he does it, right? And stuff like that with full confidence, right? If a guy like that can get a girlfriend or a girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, there's hope for everyone, man.
I think a lot of men are accustomed to feeling pleasure on their penis, on this sort of external organ. But you can feel pleasure in different places too.
That's called sounding.
And internally. And so that experience is having this part of my anatomy that I normally think of as being the penetrator and that I normally use for penetrating, to have it then be penetrated, it becomes a kind of flip.
I'm not doing that. Hold on, I'm going to wait till it plays on the DTS.
Put red ants on your genitals on stream, please.
Yeah, no, I'm not doing that. That, one, I can't find my webcam. Two, that would be painful. And three, I would get banned at the very least as soon as the stream was over, whenever their AI system detected, you know, full view my dick fire ants on it or red ants on it. Yeah, no, I'm not doing that.
Flipping of gender norms there. I think that if our society can get to a place of acceptance of people's desires, again, keeping in mind the importance of consent and those desires, and the importance of acting on desires in a
Okay, now this guy's arguing about making sure we consider consent, right? And it goes back to what that other guy said about the whole how a maggot can't consent, an earthworm can't consent, but it also doesn't know that it's on your dick or whatever, right? Stuff. And this guy's arguing that we got to make sure we're actually things are consenting here. It's like, okay, how do you confirm an earthworm consents to going in your urethra, right? Because clearly, if you have to use smoke, like this guy said, if you have to use smoke from incense to get it to go in, right? It clearly didn't consent. You had to use an external force, knowing it didn't like that external force. Oh wow.